These are the headlines that we're following at this hour. Israel reportedly hits Iran in what appears to be a retaliatory strike to Iran's attack last weekend. The U.S. has notified in advance, but officials say they had not authorized the strike and urged restraint from Israel. The South Korean government plans to allow flexibility for medical schools when recruiting new students for next year's admission slots. They can choose the number of new students next year, but within a range of over 50% to 100% of the increased places. Starting next month, South Korea will be shifting to an endemic status from the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of the last remaining mandates will be lifted, including having to wear masks at hospitals. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with growing conflict in the Middle East. Israel has reportedly carried out a strike on Iran in response to Tehran's retaliatory attack on Israel this past weekend. Iran says their air defenses shut down 3 drones. Our Yoon leads us off.
Israel carried out an attack on Iran on Friday as reported by CNN, Reuters, and other sources. Iran's state media reported that just after midnight, 3 drones were seen above Isfahan, activating an air defense system that destroyed them. This is 6 days after Iran launched hundreds of drones and missiles in retaliation against Israel, following a suspected Israeli strike on its embassy compound in Syria. Although the Israeli military has not commented on the reports, declared its intention to respond to Iran's assault, while other sources from the U.S. told CNN that the strike was carried out by Israel. According to Iran's state news agency, 3 explosions were heard near an army base in Isfahan province, a facility also located near the Isfahan airport. It added that there was no damage and all facilities in the area are secure, including significant nuclear facilities. Isfahan, located over 400 kilometers south of Iran's capital city, holds strategic significance as it is home to various crucial sites, including military research and development facilities and bases. The nearby city of Natanz is particularly known as one of Iran's nuclear enrichment sites. Sources say that the United States was notified before Israel's attack on Iran. To this, senior U.S. officials say they have not authorized the strike and urged restraint from Israel in order to avoid escalating tensions into a wider regional conflict. Meanwhile, it was reported by NBC News that U.S. President Joe Biden has informed Israeli leaders that the U.S. will not participate in Israel's offensive actions against Iran, while reiterating its commitment to Israel's defense. Yoon, Arirang News.
The geopolitical crisis is fueling financial instability outside of the Middle East. South Korea is no exception with its currency, and the stock markets have taken a hit in response. The country's finance chief is calling for an emergency response. Moon Hae-ryun has more.
The South Korean won has taken a plunge against the greenback along with the stock market, driven by increased safe haven demand amid heightened conflict in the Middle East. At the close of Friday's session, the $1 exchange rate hit 1,382, 9.3 Korean won higher than the previous close. This comes following reports of Israel launching retaliatory missile attacks on Iran early on Friday morning, in addition to an official from the U.S. Central Bank mentioning the possibility of an interest rate increase, causing the dollar to sharply appreciate. The $1 exchange rate has fluctuated over the past week, surpassing the 1,400 won to dollar mark during Tuesday's session for the first time in 17 months. The country's benchmark Kospi index also took a hit, coming to a close at just over 2,591. This is 1.63% lower than Thursday's close, and during the trading session dipped below the 2,560 mark for the first time since February. While the market showed signs of stabilizing the day before due to lowered expectations of Israel striking back, stocks plummeted once again in light of the recent developments. Speaking from Washington, D.C. via video conference, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok commented on the growing financial instability at home and abroad. He called for all ministries to strengthen their emergency response systems to prevent any negative impacts on the South Korean economy, and that a joint emergency response team will continue to operate over the weekend to closely monitor any future developments. While there have yet to be any disruptions to energy, export and import, supply chain or shipping sectors, he instructed that the emergency response team needs to prepare in real time for situations as they unfold. Meanwhile, oil prices have seen a rise back into the $90 per barrel range over growing concerns over market supply in the Middle East. 문혜련, Arirang News.
At the United Nations Security Council, a resolution to allow Palestine's full membership of the UN was yet again blocked by a U.S. veto. Park Geon-woo tells us more.
The United States vetoed a resolution put before the United Nations Security Council on Thursday local time that advocated full UN membership status for Palestine.
The United States continues to strongly support a two-state solution. This vote does not reflect opposition to Palestinian statehood, but instead is an acknowledgement that it will only come from direct negotiations between the parties.
The U.S. State Department also said earlier Thursday that there was no unanimity as to whether Palestine met the criteria for membership as a state in the UN. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas criticized the U.S. veto as unfair, unethical, and unjustified, and said the decision defies the will of the international community to support Palestine in obtaining full membership. 12 of the 15 members of the Security Council voted in favor, while 2 countries, the UK and Switzerland, abstained. For any resolution to pass, at least 9 out of the 15 members must support it, along with no vetoes by the 5 permanent members, the US, China, Russia, the UK, and France. If it is passed by the Council, then the resolution must be approved by 2/3 of the General Assembly. This was Palestine's second attempt to become the 194th member of the UN with full voting rights.
We've been waiting since 1947, and we are in 2024. Admit us to membership. It's an investment in peace.
Palestine is currently a non-member permanent observer state, a status granted in November 2012, after it failed to gain full membership due to a veto in 2011, again by the U.S. Park Geon-woo, Arirang News.
In Ukraine, another drone attack was attempted on Thursday against the Russian-held Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. According to officials appointed by Russia at the plant, the latest attempt comes less than a fortnight following a similar attempt, and that Ukraine is responsible for the reckless action. The International Atomic Energy Agency, for its part, has voiced grave concerns over the potential repercussions of such an attack on a nuclear power plant. Ukraine has yet to respond to the accusation. The South Korean Ministry of Education has once again released a statement urging for an immediate adjustment regarding distortions of wartime history in Japanese middle school history textbooks. The Japanese government on Friday approved revisions to 2 more middle school textbooks that falsely claim Dokdo is Japanese territory and that South Korea is illegally occupying the island. The revised information also denies any forcefulness in describing the so-called comfort women who were forced into sexual slavery during Japan's colonial rule. 16 others were approved last month, and South Korea expressed deep regret over the matter, stressing the importance of imparting truth to future generations with a more responsible attitude. The annual Korea Flying Training, the largest flying training held by South Korea and the U.S. on the Korean Peninsula, is currently underway amid efforts to ensure combined readiness against enemy threats. South Korea's Air Force on Friday released footage of Seoul and Washington's fighter jets performing missions together over the West Sea the day before. 1,400 military personnel from South Korea's Air Force, the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Army, the U.S. Marine Corps, and some 100 aircraft are participating in the exercise. The drills are focused on enhancing the interoperability of the Allies' advanced fighters. This year's exercise, which kicked off last week at Kunsan Air Base, will run until next Friday. The leader of Romania will make a 4-day visit to South Korea next week to meet with President Yoon Suk-yeol. That's according to Yoon's office on Friday, which announced Romanian President Klaus Werner Iohannis will make an official visit to the country from Monday to Thursday. It added Yoon and Iohannis plan to hold a meeting to discuss strategic cooperation, including in the defense industry and nuclear power. South Korea and Romania established diplomatic relations in 1990 and elevated their ties to strategic partnership in 2008. To the latest in the medical school enrollment quota dispute. The government has decided to allow flexibility when it comes to recruiting new medical students for next year's admission slots, taking on board feedback from the heads of 6 public universities. Our Choi Soo-hyung has the latest.
The South Korean government has changed its plan to expand the medical school enrollment quota. In Friday's briefing at 3 p.m., Prime Minister Han Duk-soo announced that the government will allow each medical school to freely decide the number of students who can enroll, but only for 2025.
Considering each university's educational circumstances, this year, out of the 32 universities with expanded medical school quotas, they can independently recruit new medical students only in 2025, within a range from over 50% to 100% of the increased places.
But it maintains the overall number of 2,000. Also, the universities that decide to reduce the number of new students for next year need to increase the number of places for 2026. Prime Minister Han also mentioned that the government has agreed with the suggestions given by the presidents of 6 national universities. On Thursday, the presidents of Gyeongbuk, Gyeongsang, Chungnam, Chungbuk, Gangwon and Jeju national universities proposed that each university should be able to freely determine the number of medical school students in 2025. They stated that for over 2 months, nearly 10,000 medical students have taken leaves of absence against the government's expansion plan, worrying about a decline in education quality. They emphasized that getting students back to class and normalization in the medical field are becoming urgent. However, some medical school officials from private universities said it would not help solve the fundamental issues. They added that they would await a deep dialogue through the government-proposed social consultation to address the remaining challenges. The presidential office said the task force could be launched as early as next week. It will have around 20 members, including health ministry officials, doctors' groups, nurses, pharmacists, and patients. Each university has to announce its official admissions guide, including the number of new students, by May after approval from the Korean Council for University Education. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
South Korea is set to shift its categorization of COVID-19 to endemic level more than 4 years since the outbreak of the disease. Starting May 1st, the government will lower its crisis level to the lowest of its 4-tier system, and accordingly, some of the remaining mandatory safety measures will be lifted. Our Kim Bo-kyung gives us the details.
From alert to the lowest level of attention. Starting May 1st, South Korea will fully shift its COVID-19 status to endemic, lowering the disease in its 4-level crisis system from the second highest to the lowest. This decision comes more than 4 years after the first COVID-19 infection was identified on January 20th, 2020. The health authorities cited the country's stable situation with a low fertility rate, and none of the particularly dangerous variants being detected as the reasons behind the decision.
COVID-19 is safely being managed. After we listened to experts' advice twice, last January and April, most of them agreed on the possibility of lowering the crisis level.
According to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency, the number of new COVID-19 patients in the second week of April was 22,083, a sharp drop from the 47,005 reported in the first week of March. Another reason behind the decision was that no other new variant, except for the JN.1, which made up more than 83% of new cases, has been detected. As South Korea fully shifts to an endemic approach, some of the remaining mandatory safety measures will no longer be applied. The mandatory indoor mask requirement that remained for hospitals and other infection-vulnerable facilities will be lifted, as will be the preemptive COVID-19 tests that were required for people entering such facilities. Quarantining for 24 hours is still recommended for patients after their main symptoms dissipate. Additionally, government coverage of associated medical costs will end, no longer paying for COVID-19 tests or the hospitalization of severely ill patients. Patients will also have to partly pay for Paxlovid, an oral antiviral pill, except for those in low-income groups. COVID-19 vaccine will be freely given to everyone through the 2024 flu season, but afterward, coverage will be limited to high-risk groups, including people aged 65 and over, and those with compromised immune systems. Lastly, government-level response organizations such as the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters, which has been overseeing COVID-19-related measures since its outbreak, will be disbanded. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
President Yoon has offered to meet with the leader of the main opposition party, Lee Jae-myung, next week and frequently in the future to discuss state affairs. This comes after the ruling People Power Party suffered a crushing defeat in the recent general election. The president's senior press secretary Lee Do-woon said Friday that Yoon held a phone call with Lee at around 3:30 p.m. on Friday, inviting him to the Yongsan presidential office next week. He suggested that they first meet to initiate communication, then meet frequently, have tea, dine together, and hold phone calls to discuss state affairs. He also congratulated Lee and members of the Democratic Party on their electoral wins. A senior presidential aide told reporters that the call lasted around 5 minutes and that it was better to have the call sooner rather than later, as replacing Yoon's most senior officials is taking longer than anticipated. The DP spokesperson welcomed the invitation soon after it was announced to the press. He reportedly responded that they should meet as soon as possible, as there is much to discuss regarding state affairs and people's livelihoods. South Korea will create a venture capital fund to encourage private investment in clean energy projects. Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok announced a plan to create the fund amounting to 23 trillion won, or around $17 billion at the recent G20 finance leaders meeting in Washington, D.C. Choi also said that the South Korean government would continue to invest actively in multilateral climate funds, as well as initiatives aimed at assisting developing countries reduce their carbon emissions. Tomorrow, April 20th, is Disabled Persons Day here in Korea. Our culture correspondent Song Yu-jin spoke with a K-pop group debuting on that day, whose passion and commitment have already begun to inspire others.
어텐션, 매일 오션입니다. 잘 부탁드립니다.
The name Big Ocean reflects their desire to spread hope and positivity, like the feeling you get when gazing at the ocean. All three members, Ji-seok, Hyunjin, and Chanyeon, have hearing impairments. Ji-seok was born with a disability, while Hyunjin and Chanyeon experienced partial hearing loss at a young age. They can hear with the help of hearing aids and cochlear implants, but singing and dancing require a whole new level of perseverance and dedication.
We all interpret the bounce, feeling, and beat of a song differently, so it was a bit chaotic at first. Trying to harmonize with each other was challenging, but we worked hard to find a way to blend our differences together.
Since I have difficulty hearing, learning a new song from scratch is tough, so I keep listening to it repeatedly to become more familiar with it. Even then, it can be a struggle to grasp the beat correctly and match the tone and volume of the other members. In those cases, our staff helps out.
After a year and a half of training, they're debuting with their single Light, a remake of first-generation K-pop boy group H.O.T's song of the same title. Their disabilities don't hinder their performances thanks to cutting-edge technology like light and vibrating metronomes. With these, mastering K-pop synchronized sophisticated dance moves is not a problem.
We first converted the sound into a beat vibration through the smartwatch, and also we synced it to the flashing light so that they can see the screen and feel the music with the flashing lights. In this way, they were able to feel the music more clearly, and they later tried to come up with some grooves and bounces too.
What sets Big Ocean apart isn't just their historical debut as the first K-pop group where all members have hearing impairments. They're also inspiring change.
Even with cochlear implant surgery, keeping up with the rhythm and hitting the right pitch is challenging. I think Big Ocean's incredible efforts will prove that disabilities don't confine the realm of arts, especially singing.
That's exactly what Big Ocean hopes to do. Show that music is for everyone and passion knows no limits.
저희 빅오션 그룹 앞으로 활동을 통해서 많은 사실 이제 청각 장애뿐만 아니라 다른 장애를 가지고 있는 많은 분들이 계시잖아요. 용기를 좀 더 내서 본인이 하고 싶은 일을 또 하셨으면 좋겠고. 네, 고생하셨습니다. 감사합니다.
송유진, 아리랑 뉴스.
The dust is gradually being removed. If you look at the current status of fine dust, the air quality is going up and down from bad to very bad, mainly in the central regions, Gyeongsang-namdo province and Jeju Island. By tomorrow morning, some areas will have dense dust concentrations. Please continue to take care of your respiratory health. Spring rain will wash away the yellow dust tomorrow, starting with the coast of Jeollanam-do province and Jeju Island in the morning. Rain will expand across the country in the afternoon. This rain will relieve the yellow dust and ease the early summer-like heat. Most of the rain is expected to die down by dawn on Sunday. There's a warm morning in store for tomorrow. Seoul and Daejeon 14 degrees Celsius. Daytime temperatures will move up to 20 in Seoul and Chuncheon. Daejeon, Daegu, and Busan, 18 degrees Celsius. After the rain, temperatures will be a bit lower than this week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that is all for this newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 10 p.m. with the AI Headline News. Have a great weekend.